Today, we're starting off with a ride on the Docklands Light Railway. As I previously mentioned in my Nuremberg video, this is another example of a mass transport system without a driver. I mean, how else would I get this frontal view? It opened in the late 80s to help revitalize a dying area of the London borough of Tower Hamlets. That general area was known as the Isle of Dogs, which housed the West India Docks. Definitely not a tongue twister. From the early 1800s, it was, well, pretty much the United Kingdom's greatest port. But with the invention of containerization and ships becoming just too massive to go that upstream on the Thames, the docks moved to Tilbury, and the whole Isle of Dogs area fell into disrepair. But trading was not ready to leave this area. Therefore, in the early 80s, the London Docklands Development Corporation was formed, with the old docks and warehouses either being refurbished or demolished to make way for a new economic center, alongside some quite expensive real estate. And to help people move from their offices or expensive houses, they built the DLR. With that bit of info, we're getting off now at West India Quay, in the northernmost part of the area known as Canary Wharf. You wouldn't believe 30 or 40 years ago this place was deserted and just a giant construction site. I can't even physically count the budget used to redevelop this area. I think the shortest distance between stations on the London transport network has to be between West India Quays and Canary Wharf itself. But then again, when the alternative is swimming, it does make sense. Canary Wharf has its name from the sea trade it had with the Canary Islands, which incidentally in Latin were named as Canary Insulae? I don't know how to speak Roman, but that translates to Dog Islands. Trade with the Dog Islands at the Isle of Dogs. Did I mention that London is also an excellent place to do plane spotting? What you have in frame is one of Emirates' Airbus A380s, the largest passenger plane in the world. Sadly, it will go out of production pretty soon because they're not very efficient. Oh, I didn't do my in-the-world accent. A station further down, at South Quays, which is in the middle of the Isle of Dogs, I found one of the more aesthetically pleasing modern sights of London, and my personal favorite. I wonder how this place would look in 10-20 years' time, because as you can see, they ain't stopping building. I dare say this place beats Frankfurt am Main in terms of skyscrapers. Crossing the Thames, we end up in the borough of Greenwich. In the old days, you had to find the nearest bridge to cross across to Greenwich, which could be miles away in the center of London. You could own a boat to try and cross the river while avoiding shipping, or you could pay the ferry. But since 1902, you could physically walk underneath the Thames. And it's not the only foot tunnel underneath the Thames. 10 years later, a similar one was built at Woolwich. 370 meters long and 15 meters deep, this is the Greenwich Foot Tunnel. And as I zoom in, you can see the other side of the tunnel on the Isle of Dogs. Today, you just take the DLR to the Cutty Sark station, which brings me to this beautiful sailing ship located in Greenwich. The Cutty Sark is one of the last tea clippers ever to be built, entering service in 1870. A clipper is designed to be as a fast merchant vessel, and this ship was fast, 17.5 knots maximum speed, which for a sailing vessel in the age of steam is extremely impressive. Its main role was to deliver tea as fast as possible from China, hence the term tea clipper. The opening of the Suez Canal offering a shorter route to China and improvements to fuel efficiency of steamships relegated the Cutty Sark to delivering wool from Australia, where it held the record as the fastest delivery ship for about 10 years. After a few stints in Portugal and as a cadet training ship for the Royal Navy, it was laid up here as a museum ship. But Cutty Sark is not the main reason people know about Greenwich. It has to do with this hill that I am on top of and filming this beautiful panorama of the Thames River and various boroughs of London. I mean, there's Canary Wharf, where we started our video, and right in front of it is the old Royal Naval College. You can't see that clearly how the Thames twists and bends around this area, so here's a render on Google Maps to illustrate that point. As you might have seen on the map, through here passes the prime meridian, which divides our planet into western and eastern hemispheres. This brass line here is also very important because it allowed the creation of time zones, synchronizing modern life to always be on time. Except when it comes to Deutsche Bahn trains. They always seem to arrive from different time zones. Since it was chosen in 1884, modern measuring techniques actually place the prime meridian 102 meters east of this line. But still, when the scale is thousands of kilometers, that's a pretty good estimation. And here's my feet being in both hemispheres at the same time. It comes as no surprise that they decided to place the prime meridian next to the Greenwich Royal Observatory. Royal Greenwich Observatory? Royal Observatory Greenwich? Today it is mostly a museum, the observatory being moved to Cambridge, but recently it returned to being an actual observatory with the installation of the AMAT telescope. Here you also find this neat 24-hour clock and the British Standard Measurement Units, which is vastly inferior to the metric system. And that is how you annoy the British Empire and its American colonies. Did I mention that London is excellent for plane spotting? That's another Emirates A380. And I don't think there is a better place to spot those aircraft than Hyde Park, where we find the Kensington Palace. We went on the other side of London and we're now in the royal borough of Kensington and Chelsea. A little mild spoiler, this whole brick theme of the palace will kind of be the aesthetic of this borough. As for the palace itself, since the 17th century it held many, mostly minor members of the royal family, but today it is notable for being the residence of the heir apparent to the British throne, the Prince of Wales, William. Continuing about princes, in Hyde Park you will also find the Albert Memorial. It was built by Queen Victoria in memory of her beloved husband, Prince Albert. The relationship they shared was special, and I do recommend reading on the subject if you are so inclined. What I can say is his untimely death devastated Queen Victoria. She entered a deep state of mourning and wore black for the rest of her life. It also is the only time she went against her husband's wishes, due to Prince Albert not desiring having memorials built in his name. And as far as memorials go, this has got to be the most majestic one I have seen in my life. A true work of art. And just across the street from the Albert Memorial we find Britain's greatest concert hall, the Royal Albert Hall. And here's where I admit I have made a mistake. The Royal Albert Hall and the Albert Memorial are actually in the city of Westminster, not the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. Which means the mild spoiler that said that Kensington Palace is moot. Therefore I'll just call it the general aesthetic of the area. Behind the Royal Albert Hall we find the Imperial College London, one of the highest rated universities in the world. Ha, I didn't forget this time. A few notable alumni from Imperial include Sir Alexander Fleming, the discoverer of penicillin, H.G. Wells, the writer, and Brian May, the guitarist from the rock band Queen. Crossing back in the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea we find the Victoria and Albert Museum, one of the largest exhibitions in Europe, which I do plan on visiting when I am back in London. And just a short walk away, you also find one of the museums I did wish I had time to visit, the Natural History Museum. Because where else am I supposed to see dinosaur skeletons? As I did mention the city of Westminster, it brings me nicely to my next talking point, Westminster Abbey. Located right next to the Houses of Parliament, this abbey hosted almost all coronation ceremonies for the kings and queens of England and almost all state funerals as well, one of which we've seen recently, and one coronation ceremony which we will see soon enough. I guess that covers a few of the boroughs of London, which are 33 in number, and I will not spend an hour going through each individual one. Two more things before I go. Get yourself a weekly bus pass, go to the end of the line, climb on top of one of the double-deckers and sit in front. It is arguably one of the best ways to explore London. I thoroughly enjoyed doing it. I might just make a video out of the recordings I had for one of the lines. Might. And secondly, did I tell you that London is excellent for plane spotting? Until next time.